And that's why it's so important to guard what goes into you. Whatever goes into you is going to come out. How many of you guys know people eat a lot of garlic and then they sweat and then they stink like garlic? Why do they smell like garlic? So a lot of garlic went into them. The garlic has to come out. And a lot of times it comes out when people sweat. So whatever goes into you is going to come out. The same is true about your body as it is about your mind. Whatever goes into your mind is going to come out in some way. If you're always taking in negativity, if you're always taking in lies, if you're always taking in hostility, if you're always taking in pessimism, well then, surprise, surprise, that's the personality that comes out of you. Insecurities would be one. Last period, somebody mentioned self-doubts. So, yeah, and they're phantoms. They're not just things that are in your head, which is true. But it's also like it's a ghost. It's a figment of your imagination. Because if something is like, you know, it's about like trying to prove a negative. You know what that means? Like if you were to say that you believed in God, and you'd say, someone could say to you, "Prove God exists." Well, you're trying to prove a positive. If someone comes along and says, "Well, prove He doesn't," that's trying to prove a negative. Proving a negative is almost impossible. It's very difficult to prove a negative. And so you can get stuck on those things. So if you were to say, my nose, I'm not smart enough, let's just say. Okay, prove that you're not smart enough. That's impossible to do. So if you're thinking about a goal that you might have and you say, well, I want to go to I want to graduate from Harvard, or I want to open up a business. And then if I were to ask you, well, do you think you have what it takes? No, I'm just not smart enough. You can't prove that you're not smart enough. There's no way to prove something like that. It's trying to prove a negative. What you could do is prove a positive. You could prove that you are smart enough, that you could do it, that you are hardworking, that you do have a vision, and that's by actually doing the thing. Because even if you try to get into Harvard, even if you try to get a business going, and then you're not successful in those things, it doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't smart enough. There's a whole bunch of other factors that could be contributing to it. It's like if you're trying to get a job. People oftentimes think that if you get an interview and you go in, if you don't get the job, does that mean you aren't good enough for them? No. The very fact that you get the interview, they're telling you you're qualified. Now the question is, do you fit in? If you're going to go there, are you going to get along with their employees? Are you going to get along with their culture? If not, then they're going to pick the person who they think fits in the best. It's mostly a personality thing. So don't walk away from a job that you don't get and say, I wasn't good enough. Walk away from the job interview and say, wow, I'm not going to fit in there. It's a good thing that they didn't hire me, because you probably wouldn't have been happy there anyway. Or at the very least, there was just somebody else who fit in better. But it's not about your value as a person. It's not about whether or not you're smart enough or good enough or have the qualifications. The fact that you got the interview, they're telling you that you are good enough. That's neat. It should be encouraging. Now it's finding a place that you fit into. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know people who work at places where they just don't like being there. They come home angry all the time, and they're complaining about their bosses, they're complaining about their jobs. And that's because they just don't fit in there. And yet rather than moving and finding a place where they might fit in, they get stuck somewhere. Not getting the job curtails all of that. Not getting the job tells you that right off the bat. We're going to save you all of these years of frustration because you probably wouldn't fit in here very well. It's like, whew, good for me. And so it doesn't have anything to do with your self-worth. Just like if you don't get into a college, it has nothing to do with your self-worth. If you get into a business and the business fails, it doesn't mean anything about your self-worth. By the way, the inverse is true also. If you get into a college, that doesn't say anything about your self-worth. If you have a successful business, it doesn't say anything else about your self-worth. The fact that you're a human being and that you're alive, that says something about your self-worth. Now, what you amount to after that has to do with what it is that you do, and of course, what you don't do. But what you do and what you don't do has a lot to do with those phantoms that are in your mind. Especially the things like you can't prove the opposite of. Insecurities. Are you good enough? Are you smart enough? Those are the things that will stop you from trying things. And if you don't try it, then you're not going to be successful at it. Of course. And by the way, if you try something, are you going to fail at it? A lot of times, yes. Now, I know that today we oftentimes say, it's good to fail, because then you can learn. And then we're like, yeah. No, failure sucks. If you're a competitive person, if you're a person who really cherishes winning, who wants to be successful, of course, losing sucks. And that's easy to prove. Would you rather be successful 100% of the time and never learn anything, but always be the best? Or would you rather lose all the time and keep learning? The fact that you're winning all the time suggests that you already have learned. You already do know. You already are the best. Now it's just maintaining being the best. We can lull ourselves into this idea that failure is okay, and then when we fail, we don't feel bad about it. And yeah, I mean, you should feel bad about it, but not in terms of your own self-worth. If you're running, you're a track meet or whatever, and somebody runs faster than you, it's worth asking yourself, was I as fast as I could have been? Could I have trained harder? Could I have dieted better? Could I have lifted more weights? Could I have done better? If the answer to all of that is no, then the answer is that you were fine. More papers. Oh, thank you. So the question in all those things is, did you do everything you could have? And if you could have, there's no shame in it. And if you didn't, there's no shame in it. As a person, as a competitor, of course. But that's not your self-worth, man. And if it matters a lot to you, then you improve yourself. It's hard to do, but I mean, if it's a path that you chose, whatever the path is that you've chosen, the thing that's going to stop you from getting to the end of it are those phantoms, those things that are in your head that are telling you you can't. Because if you believe you can't, well, then you probably can't. And everybody who does it are people who actually believe that they can. And that's why it's so important to guard what goes into you. Whatever goes into you is going to come out. How many of you guys know people who eat a lot of garlic, and then they sweat, and then they stink like garlic? Why do they smell like garlic? Because a lot of garlic went into them. The garlic has to come out. And a lot of times it comes out when people sweat. So whatever goes into you is going to come out. The same is true about your body as it is about your mind. Whatever goes into your mind is going to come out in some way. If you're always taking in negativity, if you're always taking in lies, if you're always taking in hostility, if you're always taking in pessimism, well then, surprise, surprise, that's the personality that comes out of you. If you're bringing in and I don't just mean like blind positivity, like, nope, everything's going to be okay. No, things are not going to be okay, but you know what? I can deal with them. There's your positivity. The world's not going to be perfect, but you can make the best of it. To believe in yourself enough to believe that you can make the best of it. But that means that you have to quiet those phantoms. And the best way to quiet those phantoms is probably to prove them wrong. Is it possible to be better? Prove yourself that you can be better. How? By being better. How do I get better? And this is the hard part. Doing the things that you already know you should be doing. What is if you're again, going back to the track example, if you're a track runner, do you know what you should be doing? Yeah, you know. It's just hard to do it all the time. Of course, that's the discipline thing. Should you run more? Or at least, should you be in the weight room more? Should you get your diet more on schedule? Should you get your rest schedule tighter? Of course. All of those things will make you better. It's difficult to discipline yourself to do them, but you know what it is that you should be doing. And that's a really hard part of life. It isn't always that we don't know what to do. It's that we know what to do. It's just hard to do. But you gotta quiet the phantoms, the things that are telling you you can't do it. If you can quiet the phantoms and then take in the positive things, those positive things will come out of you. I won't make you any promises, but that's one promise I can make you. Whatever goes into you is going to come out of you. So you need to guard your heart. What kind of things are you letting into your heart? Guard your mind, man. What kind of things are going into your mind? Guard your body. What kind of things are you allowing into your body? All of those things are going to work themselves out. And so, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Friday-ish.